Well, welcome to a garden video from Moncton, Vermont. My original intent had been to do this back in November. I think the last one I did was October, and I said, well, we'll do another one maybe in November. And well, sometimes lots of things get in the way, but here we are. It is actually May 10th. It is Mother's Day. Happy Mother's Day to all appropriate women in the world, and we've got a number of them in our family who are just the best you could ever find. And so happy Mother's Day to everybody. In any event, had we filmed this yesterday, it would have certainly looked like November, because we picked up a little bit of snow yesterday, and it was a miserably cold, blustery, raw day, and fortunately that snow is gone. See, there's no snow showing whatsoever. It is all gone, and we're here to talk about our gardening plans for the spring. We built a couple of raised beds here, and then there is a bed behind these two raised beds that was actually used by the previous owner that Mary cleaned out last fall. And the soil isn't too bad. We added some compost to it. This will be our vegetable gardening experience for this year. Attended an online seminar on raised bed gardening. It was supposed to be in person, but it was redone because of what's going on right now in the world with the coronavirus, obviously. And I'm going to tell you, there are worse places to be quarantined than where we are right now. It's just quite remarkable, and we love it here. In any event, the seminar discussed many different ways of creating raised beds, and we decided, rather than buying a kit, we would order some 2x12 rough cut hemlock. Hemlock lasts for a long, long time. And there's a lumber yard about 7 or 8 miles up the road in Heinsberg, Clifford Lumber. We emailed them and told them what we were looking for, and they emailed back, told us it would be ready the next day. We drove up in the pickup truck, and these planks had just been sawed from the raw hemlock trunks that morning, and I'm going to tell you, they were the heaviest doggone things you can imagine. I mean, we could barely lift one of these 8-footers, and the guy who loaded our truck, he just picked them up like they were matchsticks and threw them in the back. It was quite discouraging and humbling to be shown how old and miserable you've become at this age. In any event, so we then assembled them, bolted them together, and these are both 4x8. So we've got two 4x8 raised beds that we filled with a mixture of topsoil and compost, and the compost is pretty heavy with the cow manure, and we brought that back in the pickup truck from a place just about 10 minutes down the road, which is very convenient. We had hoped to have some of these planted with some of the cold weather crops, lettuce, beets, radishes, carrots, broccoli, cauliflower. Those are some of the things we wanted to get in here this weekend, but when we saw the forecast was for snow, we said, nope, we'll wait. So hopefully by next week we will be involved with that, and so the next time we visit this garden, hopefully we will have more to show. We also have planted a few tiny Fraser fir trees right here, and where these orange stakes are, and balsam firs down just to the other side of this garden. You can't see them, they're too small, but we bought some blueberry bushes and have a few more to get so we can have 2 varieties for better pollination. We bought these trees and the bushes as a fundraiser for the Otter Creek Conservation District. So they're not very big. It'll be a few years before we get any blueberries out of those. And way out the other side of the weather station, out towards that big ash tree, is about a 4-foot tall twig that is a sugar maple, which someday will be big, not in my lifetime. But one of the question, Mary heard this, I'm not sure where she heard it from, but the best time to plant a tree, 20 years ago. That's the best time. Now, there's something else that we want to show you too that's been going on here, and we'll take a walk up the hill. As you may remember from last fall, we talked about the potential of building a pond where there used to be a above-ground swimming pool that the previous owners had that we wanted to have removed. And earlier this week, we had a local Moncton excavator come in and do some work, which you can see a little bit of what he was doing now. And he spent about 2.5 hours here digging this out. The underlayment and the liner are both in transit to us from Oklahoma. We couldn't find anything large enough locally. The rough dimensions of the pond by the time it is done will be roughly 19 feet across and 19 by 14 and about approximately 3 feet deep. Looks deeper than that at the moment, but that will be filled in a little bit. And so we're looking forward to getting this pond going and having plantings around the pond and shrubs and gardens and that sort of thing. So that should come soon. And one other thing, the south side of the house had a huge amount of erosion, and Mary, all by herself, built these 3 retaining walls and reshaped the garden. Hasn't been planted yet, still doing some work on the soil, but that will certainly change what we had. She built another small one on the other side of the house as well, so did a great job. Just looks really good and going to be quite the nice change. So lots of things are happening here, and hopefully maybe later in May or maybe in June we'll be able to report to you on what's in the ground and what's been done and how the raised beds are working out. And we do know that there's a very heavy-duty rabbit population out here, and so we're going to have to put some protection on those beds in order to keep the rabbits out, some chicken wire and some garden fence posting, which we will get to shortly. One other thing to talk about very briefly, I failed to mention the webinar on raised beds was conducted by a man named Charlie Nardozzi. Charlie has some connections with Gardner Supply Company up here in Burlington. He used to work for the Vermont County Extension Service, Chittenden County Extension Service. And when my mother first started gardening, when she moved from suburban New York to rural New Hampshire, she told me she would listen to Charlie Nardozzi on Vermont Public Radio because he had all kinds of good gardening info, and he's still around and going strong. And I remember her talking about that, and it was kind of fun to do a webinar with somebody that influenced my mom back in the early to mid 70s. And also, when I started gardening, and my first vegetable garden was in 1974, a program came on WGBH in Boston, the public broadcasting station in Boston, called Crockett's Victory Garden. And Jim Crockett was the host, and it was during a time frame where we had been going through an oil embargo, fuel prices were going up, and self-sufficiency had become a major piece of American life, much as is happening now. And I ended up with this book here, which was a companion book to the TV show. And that was my gardening Bible, along with Organic Gardening Magazine and books by Ruth Stout, and was a strong advocate of organic gardening. And we're hoping that our garden this year will be organic as well and continue on that way. So just a little bit of history from many years ago. Look forward to seeing what this summer. That's about it. Pretty short. Nothing much to show, but some good projects going on. We have a lot to do. We have a list a mile long of things we want to do on this home and this yard, and we'll take them as they come. But hopefully within the week we will A, have some plants in the garden, and B, we'll have a pond liner in there that's being filled and can get some real good progress on that pond. So happy Mother's Day again to everybody. Enjoy, and we'll talk again soon. Bye-bye.